Well, welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you. Tonight we're going to make green beans and new potatoes, Southern style. And I'll tell you a little bit later what I mean by Southern style. Here are your ingredients. It's a short list. Go ahead and pause and write them down. And hey, if you like this video, show us with a thumbs up, and we'd love for you to subscribe. Well, here I have about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of new potatoes. We just dug these up a couple of days ago, and I washed them and I brushed them with a soft bristle brush. I say that 3 times fast. And I'm cutting them up into fairly large chunks, but the potatoes themselves are too big. They wouldn't get good and done. So what did I mean by green beans and potatoes Southern style? I'll tell you in a bit. So I have 2 tablespoons of butter in this pan. This is not my normal cast iron pan. I got it a little hot, but it's okay. I've turned the heat down now. I'm adding 2 tablespoons full of flour, and we're making a roux. And we're not using the proportions here to make a thick sauce. This is just going to be a little thickening to make the broth stand up and stick to the potatoes and the beans, just to make it a little creamy. So as always with a roux, you stir, let it simmer for just a couple minutes, just enough to get the pasty taste out of the flour, because it really won't be good unless you let it simmer a bit. Then I've got here a quart of ham broth. This is my homemade bone broth, and I'm gonna pour this in a little bit at a time because I don't want that little bit of roux to lump. If I had a different proportion here, like I usually do with, say, a sauce velouté, it would be much thicker. I'm not going for thick here. I'm going for creamy and substantial. I just want it to all stick together. And I'm using broth. You could use chicken broth. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to salt this as I go because my ham broth is salty. And I'm going to add my potatoes in here. And we're cooking in broth instead of water, and that's going to add some substance to these potatoes and flavor. Don't forget the flavor. So I'm going to let these come to a simmer and put the lid on them. Then I'm going to set them back on my low BTUI and let them simmer for about an hour. Nobody wants a crunchy potato. And that brings me to why I call this Southern style. I'm pouring in 2 quarts of my canned green beans, and I'm pouring in the juice. Some folks rinse them and add water. I'm adding the juice, and partly that's because I know how long to cook them dry without scorching them, and that's Southern style. You know, I jokingly say green beans Southern style means cook them till they're dead. We don't want any crunch in our beans. We don't want any crunch in our potatoes. And there's sort of a cultural history about that I'll tell you as we go along. This is 2 tablespoons full of lard. This is my home rendered lard. You don't have to use lard. You can use oil. You can use shortening. You could also put some chunks of ham in now. This is the lid to my pot. I'm showing this to you because I got a really good deal on this pot and I love it. It has those large dimples in the top, but we're not going to use the lid this time. We're going to let them simmer uncovered. And why is that, you ask? Because we want to evaporate the liquid. We're going to cook this for about an hour on a medium-high heat to evaporate. So our potatoes are simmering at a low heat and my beans are at a medium-high heat. It takes about an hour. I'm showing this to you after about 30 minutes. And let's check on our potatoes. They've been simmering away about 30 minutes, maybe 35. And I want to check and make sure that the potatoes are getting soft. And you can cut into them, but they're not really soft yet. And nobody wants crunch in their potatoes. So the cultural history piece. Well, you know, I'm not sure it's so much Southern as it is country. When I was growing up and there were going to be green beans for dinner, which was served at noon, You put them on in the morning low and you left them. And when everybody came in from the field to eat, they were done. We're about 10 minutes away from our hour. I'm going to add in some chunks of onion. You don't have to do that. I didn't put it in the recipe list. That's totally optional and up to you, but we like just a little onion in here. And you've still got plenty of time for them to get done. So these are cooked down. There's really no liquid or just a trace amount of liquid left in the bottom. It's evaporated, all the flavors left in there. And I'm going to add my potatoes in broth now. So now we taste it, and I was right not to add salt. The bone broth, the ham bone broth, was very salty. And you can add a little touch of pepper if you like. We're going to let this simmer now for about 10 minutes for all the flavors to come together. So you're going to want to taste again now that everything is cooked together. But I want you to look at that richness. And no, that's not a thick sauce. We didn't want a thick sauce. We just want just a little creaminess and substance added to it. I'm going to plate this up. You know, if you're a Southerner and you like your beans cooked like this, you've probably caught a little grief from some friends who think beans ought to be really crunchy and just steamed or lightly cooked. And that's a good way to cook them too. But we like them cooked this way most of the time. And one of my favorite chefs on YouTube, Chef John on foodwishes.com, who is a real chef and a real instructor, did a video the other day with beans cooked like this, and he raved about the richness of the flavor. And I think you will too if you're not used to cooking your beans this long. The flavor intensifies, especially if you leave the juice in, the addition of the broth. I mean, if you had ham chunks in this is a whole meal. You don't need anything else. And the flavor is just like at Grandma's house, or to me, it's just like at Grandma's house. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you try it. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you. See you again tomorrow.